Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. It's episode 512. We've got a great guest. We've got Jim Huffman with us from Growthhit. It's a growth agency. It's one of the leading agency in that particular niche sector. So, Jim, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm Jim Huffman. I'm the CEO of Growthhit. We are a growth marketing consultancy focused on one thing, that is conversion rate optimization. And so we like being kind of your outsourced head of growth. But yeah, I'm out here in Seattle, Washington. But yeah, excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. It's great that you agreed to come on the show, Jim. And I've got my great co-host, Adrian. Adrian, would you like to introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian. I am the CEO and founder of Groundhog. We help small businesses launch their sales funnel, grow their list, and scale their business.
And before we go into the main part of the interview, folks, I just want to mention our great sponsors. Our main sponsor, and they've been sponsoring the show for over a couple of years now, is Kinsta. Kinsta is only a WordPress hosting company. What do you get from Kinsta? Well, you get some of the best technology. You get a fantastic UX interface. You get Google Cloud hosting, and best of all, you get 24/7 support from one of the best support teams in WordPress hosting. I can honestly say that they go above the norm when it comes to their support. And you can waste a lot of time. If you've got a technical question and you can't sort it out yourself, you can waste a lot of time with hosting companies. That won't happen with Kinsta. So if you value your time and you value your client's time, I suggest you go over to Kinsta, have a look at their products, and maybe buy one of their packages for yourself or for your clients. And the main thing is tell them that you heard about Kinsta on the WP-Tonic show. Our other sponsor is a real friend of the show. It's WP Fusion. Now, if you're looking to put Groundhog, any of the SaaS-based CRMs like ActiveCampaign, Drip, there's a host of them, or like I say, Groundhog, you really do need WP Fusion. It's an amazing product. If you or your clients are into modern marketing and automation, and you want your WordPress site to be able to flawlessly communicate with these modern CRMs, you need WP Fusion. Go over to their site, look at their packages for what they can do and the amazing power. They are amazing value. Go and buy them, and like the same, go and tell them that you heard about WP Fusion on WP-Tonic. So into the main part of the interview. So Jim, first of all, what is a growth agency? Can you give us a quick synopsis of precisely what you do and why you got into that particular area?
Yeah, it's really hard to manage expectations when you throw growth in front of your name, right? So out of the gate, it's a little difficult. But yeah, I think a growth agency, a growth marketing firm, they're trying to kind of put a spin on traditional marketing, where it could be doing full funnel marketing, which is kind of how we look at it, from top of funnel or top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel. It could also be you're integrated into the product, so you're engineering growth into it. But the way I think about it is you kind of function as an outsourced head of growth, where your main KPIs are aligned with the business leaders, where it's about top line sales, it's about top line customer acquisition. And so that's how we think about it, is really kind of being one-on-one with a CEO or CMO. And how I got into this, I mean, my career actually started in finance. I was at a small investment bank doing M&A deals, meaning I just looked at spreadsheets and would never talk in meetings. And it was really fun because I would see people selling these businesses, growing them. And I was like, man, that is fascinating. I would love to be on that side of the table. And so this was a time as startups were kind of really exciting and coming up. I was like, I just need to go jump on one that I'm excited about and learn everything I can. And as I did that, I am not super technical in that I'm not a developer. So that means you kind of get thrown into the marketing role. And so I got very lucky in that I was on a couple startups where I was like early employee, knew nothing, they were growing, and quickly like, oh, we need people to figure out e-commerce, figure out email marketing, SEO. And I would just dive into that task. And from that, I was able to learn some skills and get connected with a few VC firms. They're like, oh, we loved what you did here. Would you talk to this CEO about what you did? And that led to some small one-off consulting gigs. And I eventually hit a crossroads where like in the mornings I was waking up before work doing consulting work, nights and weekends I'm doing consulting work. I'm like, I would like to have a life and maybe like some free time. I should probably make a decision what I want to do. And so about almost 4 years ago, I kind of made that decision to go from working for a startup to go all in on kind of the consulting side of things.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Over to you, Adrian.
Love to know how big your team is, and you mentioned you want to have a life. So I imagine that you have some help. One of the biggest things about being an agency is they're often stretched way too thin in terms of resources, time, personnel, etc. So how do you manage to be the growth guy for so many companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny because starting out with an agency, I had the title of CEO, which was just a complete lie. Because it's like I was doing everything, I was copywriter, I was ad optimizer, I'm project manager. And just in the past year, was I able to finally fire myself and get specialists that could do the job significantly better than me and focus on working on the business. But so we are at 7 people, hiring 2 right now, looking for 2 kind of CRO analysts to come in. And so, yeah, that was the biggest move for me, because the really hard thing with consulting is, like, as an employee, you want to go above and beyond, do whatever it takes to get results. And that's pretty simple thinking. But as an agency, that idea of going above and beyond can actually hurt your business, hurt your margins, and hurt other clients. So for me, I really struggled with that, because my default was I'll just work my tail off for every single client and get amazing results, but you have a cap. And so for us, it meant being very clear on what we do and what we don't do. So that way, within what the client cares about and what their expectations are, we can over deliver. And in things that we don't do, we can just say, hey, we don't do that. Sorry, that's out of scope. So for me, like, getting a team to do some of the things that I was doing so I could work on the business, and then aligning with our scope, have been the biggest things to have a life and actually scale the business, because it makes it much less custom whenever you're able to have a fine SOW, like statement of work, that's pretty consistent across clients.
I'd love to know a little bit about the way that your growth agency works, because typically, like, I used to be in the agency business myself, and my software is specifically geared to digital marketing agencies. And so I work a lot with digital marketing agencies, and they all have the exact same problems, or like they don't charge enough, they don't have enough time, and et cetera. The list goes on and on and on and on. And it seems like you've been able to solve a lot of those particular issues. What's the way that you work in terms of monetary investment on behalf of the client? Because there's 1,000 different ways to do it. Do it hourly, milestone, full project upfront, half and half. What's kind of like the sweet spot for all of this digital marketing work that you do?
Yeah, that's a great and loaded question. We could talk about for 10 hours, and then I'd have a million questions as well. But I've learned all of this the hard way. But one thing that I've found for us is, if we get the right client on the right tech stack at the right stage of life, a project's going to go extremely well. When you have the wrong client at the wrong phase, it is not going to work. And what's super counterintuitive is the more people will pay and the bigger they are, the actual less demanding they are. Some of the smallest clients with the smallest budgets can be the most demanding. And for me, I didn't really learn that until going through that. So you have to understand, what are your points of leverage to scale an agency when it's people-based. So one is always doing the same type of work, or 2, always working with the same types of industries, clients, or tech stacks. So if you can do those things, you can productize some of your services while still making it custom for them. And whenever you're able to do that, then you can make great SOPs to train people and do those things really well. So for us, right away, we need to know, is this a good client for us? And for us, our sweet spot is someone that's just done like a B round of funding. Ideally, they're consumer based. E-commerce and Shopify is ideal because their tech stacks are very easy to plug into. And also for a
Jim, I must interrupt. You just swore there. You just mentioned Shopify. It's WordPress, my friend. WooCommerce.
Well, I will say WooCommerce is like our other go-to. And I will say we do some big commerce.
I'm only kidding. I tease, Jim. I'm sorry.
I apologize. Yes, but it's like the e-commerce space in general. WooCommerce, Shopify are ideal, where you have kind of a nice plug-in and app ecosystem. Because with CRO, e-commerce is very black and white if you're good or not. And so
either you make money or you don't make money.
Exactly. Like lead generation can be good because there's high transaction volume, but it's not as clear of a picture to revenue ROI. And so for us, if we can qualify the client to make sure they fall into that sweet spot, and in the back of our mind, we're like, hey, we know we're going to knock this one out of the park because they have over 100,000 sessions, they have a good AOV, and they're an e-commerce site. We believe that in 9 months, they're going to be really happy. The other thing is, so it's like qualifying the clients, knowing it's the right tech stack, knowing that it's, the industry you want. The other thing is we'll delay starting until we have everything going because the first 30 days will make or break the retention of your project. And most agencies, you do so much upfront work, your margins aren't really good until 3, 6, 9, 12 months in, depending on what you do. And so if we can start and we're just getting a test live within the first week, we're launching ads in the first week, we're giving research and customer intelligence within the first 2 weeks, the client's first impression is like, wow, this team gets it. So if we can set all of that up, we're going to have, good clients that have a great lifetime value. So those are some of the things we're thinking through. The other thing is like upselling with other services that you have, right? Because we anchor in being your outsourced head of growth, doing CRO, but really that's customer intelligence. We get so many insights there that we can apply to our ads team, because we also do social ads, and to our email automation team. So those are ways to also upsell, because we're already meeting with these people once a week. If we can bake in other services and increase that average order value or monthly retainer, then that's helpful for margins.
You mentioned that you try to get companies that have funded with a B round. Now that might be lingo not entirely familiar to some of our audience. So essentially, for anyone who doesn't know, if you're taking funding, you usually take a seed round, which is you'll get $1 million from some VC or other, and then you'll take an A round, which is probably multiple VCs with multiple millions of dollars. And then if your company doesn't implode after that, then you might be able to make it to a B round. And all of this is explained in a lovely show called Silicon Valley, which is a great sitcom. If you haven't watched it, you should. But I'm curious, since you're kind of like operational at that echelon where big money is at stake, a lot of agencies are starting to consider the kind of like the work for shares or the work for ownership model. And I'm curious if that's ever something that you've explored, where instead of taking a retainer or an upfront payment, you said, hey, listen, we see this company going far, give us like 3% and we'll just take care of it.
Yeah, it's something that the branding agency Red Antler and Paper Crane Factory have done pretty well, and it's very interesting. I've done it with two, and for one, it has worked out very well. For one, it's still to be determined. And so the issue there is, if you're taking shares, who are you giving shares to? Is it to me, the owner? I'd like to share it with my team, who's actually like doing a lot of the work. So you almost need to make a separate entity where they get ownership in, and then you have a vesting schedule there as well. So it gets a little complicated. The other component that is difficult is breaking up, do you still get a retainer? Is it a discounted retainer? And how does that work? So at first, I was really excited about it. As I got into the nuance, I've struggled with that structure. And also, it's hard to put food on the table with equity shares. I can't go to Whole Foods and buy bread with equity. And so that's the other component, but it is something that like we're very interested in and we've done lightly. One other thing is, and this is going off on a tangent, but it's this buy then build model. Like if we're such a good growth agency, why can't we grow our own things? Whether it's incubating an idea that we grow or acquiring a plugin or a Shopify site that, or what WooCommerce site that has.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm getting worried. So.
That has some traction, but hasn't done some of like the kind of table stakes things we believe should be done. But yeah, I think it's a model that is very interesting. It's a matter of how you can also compensate your team is one thing that I kind of struggle with. But yeah, it's interesting.
You quickly mentioned that the question, why haven't you gone and kind of acquired just something and just done it? I know if you're familiar with Ryan Dice, he's got his survival blog thing that he's heavily invested in and his team does a lot of the work for. Have you ever, is there a reason why you haven't done that, or is that something that you're interested in?
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating approach. It's kind of on the long-term roadmap. I think like a lot of business owners, I get shiny object syndrome where it's like, oh, we should do that. We should do that. We should do that. And my CEO and partners are really good at this, at kind of reining in, like, we need to focus. And so we have some pretty aggressive goals with the consultancy. It's like, let's focus on that. Let's get that and get that machine going. And then we can kind of go on to the next thing. And so, yeah, I love that approach. Why I haven't done it is not enough hours in the day, I guess you could say. I keep trying to squeeze
typical
out
agency
more.
problems.
Right?
Not enough people, not enough time.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And it's a lot more difficult to say no when you're the customer yourself, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's like, how do you, as an agency, what is your risk appetite? Like, as you're making money and building up your cash reserves, how much burn do you want in the bank to pay for your team for 3, 6, 9 months versus investing in projects and whatnot? So that's something we're always kind of working on, because growth sucks cash. As we're looking to hire more people, our burn rate's going to go up even more, right? So it's a constant balance.
Well, my own agency, I don't actually directly employ anybody there. My core team are all on retainers, monthly retainers.
Nice.
And my core team have been with me for about 6 years. And then I have a project manager. And then I have 2 to 3 other developers and a designer. The designer's on a retainer as well, but I don't directly employ anybody in my team, but most of them have been with me between 3 and 6 years, Jim.
Yeah.
So I think that's something, because it really does help with the cash flow problem. And also my team is half is offshore and half is based in America. So it's a distributed company. We're going to go for our break and we're coming back. And I think it's been a great discussion so far, but I'm going to be asking Jim when we come back. Basically, it's the mindset of a freelancer, because when you become an agency, I think you've got to be much more focused about how you get the right type of clients than when you're a freelancer. When you're a freelancer, it's very important, but I think there's differences. I'm going to be putting that question to Jim when we come back. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We've had a great discussion with Jim. We've been talking all things agency. So as I said in the first half of the show, when you're a freelancer, I think, you could be working for an agency and you're doing some sideline projects. That's if the agency will allow you to do that. You might be working for a university or a medium to large company and you're doing side projects, right? Or you could be a freelancer and you're based on your reputation or the niche. And then you get to a certain stage and you think, I want an agency, But I think one of the big differences between freelance and agency, and I might be wrong here, is that when you become an agency, you've got to be a lot more aggressive about getting clientele and processes that can reliably fill the funnel of new prospects than when you're a freelancer, because either you're going to have people on retainers or you'll be paying people's salaries. So you've got to have a much larger flow of potential prospects. First of all, would you agree with that? And how do you build those mechanisms that fills the beast, basically, Jim?
I totally agree. If you're trying to actually build an agency or business where you remove yourself from having to do every job and be a true business owner, then you absolutely need to focus on that. Whereas like, I think the freelancer, it's, it's more of just managing your time in your own rate and in your own kind of workflow. And so I don't know, for me, like one thing that I've kind of worked on is, as I'm like building the business, trying to figure out, what are those points of leverage to actually scale and grow. So like having SOPs, knowing exactly what your workflow is huge. And I think early on, you're kind of nervous. You'll take any business. Like that's how I was, at least. I was always paranoid that I'd be fired by everybody. So I had the yes syndrome where I'd say yes to everybody. But what the truth is, you need to understand your margins for every single client, and you'll start to realize, wow, we're actually not making money here. We're losing here. Or, wow, when we take on this type of client and just do this offering, we have great margins. And by the way, the client's extremely happy. You have to go through with a fine-tooth comb on those things, because once you understand your margins and your unit economics, then you know how you can scale and grow the business. So we do a weekly update where we're looking at, especially our developers and designers, how much time they're spending and where it's going. Because especially when you're doing development work for these CRO tests, they're very time consuming and expensive. And so we kind of have a limit with clients that they know about, just to make sure we have, a healthy and sustainable business.
That's great. Over to you, Adrian.
Let's talk about, since you're a Shopify and WooCommerce and e-commerce growth expert. I'd love to know where you start. So let's say an e-commerce comes to you and they just built this store and it's very pretty, and they come to you and it's like, but we're not making any money for whatever reason. I'd love to know kind of like one of your go-to strategies. Like, well, obviously, you don't have this on your site. As soon as we deploy this, you're going to see X amount of growth just immediately, because we've done this so many times. Is there a strategy like that exists? And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I wish there was like a one-size-fits-all solution for it. I do have some best practices like everybody does. But so what we do is we do two things very quickly, and one of them most people always ignore. So we do quantitative analysis, which everybody does. We're mapping the funnel, like, okay, homepage, collection page, product detail page, checkout, where are the drop-offs? That starts to expose some things. And then we segment that based on traffic source, mobile, desktop, whatnot. So right away you have questions like, okay, wow, they're great at getting traffic from paid on mobile, but wow, everyone's abandoning. And then here's the thing that I think everybody ignores, is doing the qualitative analysis. They know what's happening on the site, but they don't know why. They're not actually being proactive in talking to their customers. So we're doing heat maps, we're doing scroll maps, we're doing session recordings, all to get at a very simple question of, the people that are abandoning, why are they abandoning? So we started doing voice of customer research. Like, okay, what did you not find today? What were you looking for that you didn't get? And right away, you start to understand what that pain point is that is not being addressed. And usually we can break it up into like 3 or 7 categories. And those insights that you get are gold, because it's like, wow, they have issues with pricing or sizing or fit, or they're still not educated on the product, when or how to use it. And once you understand that, those insights are gold to apply to a landing page, to an email campaign, to an ad campaign. So those are things that we want to get at whenever we're first starting. Beyond that, we're definitely looking at like some usability tests. We're looking at, image quality, reviews, social proof, but the quantitative and qualitative stuff, that's usually where we can get big wins.
I want to know about the discount code. I want to know, because you go to every single big e-commerce site, and the first thing that pops up is 10% email sent. I'd love to know your insight from working with larger stores than most people are familiar with.
Yeah, that you go to its site, it's like, click here, you're like batting away every pop-up with discounts and cookies and GDPR. Yeah, it's a problem. So especially if you're like a premium brand, well, first it's like right away you're educating people to look for discounts, which is that the right way to get people excited about your product? For me, that's a little worrisome, because then you're like in this price penetration mode and you're playing, it's a race to the bottom if you're doing that. So that's definitely an option. I mean, other things that I want to do is, like, if I can, I want to sell people on the aspiration, on the problem we're solving, our point of differentiation. If you have a good email nurturing campaign, pop-ups, as annoying as they are and easy to hate on, they are very good. But usually I would like to do that in the form of, content upgrade, give them some value. It's really annoying, but giveaways over $500 really work. I want them to lose every single time, but it's the best way to, get high email conversion rates. But discount codes, if you can build it into your margin, are good, but I actually like doing them more as an exit intent at a high intent page, like a checkout or a product detail page, as opposed to just doing a spray and pray approach right when people come to the site.
Is there any, do you have any measurable?
Hey, Adrian, I just want to slightly interrupt, because I actually like to expand that, what you just said, but in our bonus content. I've just seen, in the last 5 minutes of the show, I like to keep on the agency subject, but we will be coming back about the e-commerce, because I think it's a fascinating subject. But what I was going to ask you is, we've got the freelancer, we've got the agency, but you mentioned it at the beginning of the show, that finding a niche, finding an area. See, like with my own agency, we build learning management systems for universities, internal training, and we build membership websites. That's what WP-Tonic does. So all the things you pointed out, that it helps with margins, repetitivity, you know what you're taking on because you've done it a few times before. So I think in 2020, this is really important. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know. I made the mistake, like, first launching an agency where I try to be everything to everybody. Like, oh, we're a growth marketing agency. Yes, we'll do that. And you quickly realize that's not a good way to go. And it's funny. I heard the advice all the time, but until I put it into practice, did I truly understand that, like, the phrase, but like the riches are in the niches. As far as, yes, you're going to be saying no to a lot of things, and that can be really hard. But when you say yes to a few things and you find a client that fits into that sweet spot, your confidence goes up significantly. You feel much better about selling them or closing them because you know you're going to do good work, and your rates can go up. Your lifetime value goes up because of that. And the thing is, like, there's so many talented people coming on as freelancers and agencies. And unless you can capture all that talent and really be this full service agency, it's going to be hard to be everything to everybody. So I really think it is about, like, niching down and going all in, because as you start to understand the total addressable market that you're probably going after with your niche, it's much bigger than you realize. And depending on what your goals are, you don't need to capture, even 10% of it to hit your revenue goals. And so if you can be very clear on, like, what your business goals are from a revenue perspective, and you start to do the math, it's like, wow, actually, like, this is very obtainable by niching down and hitting X% of our market. Like, we can do this. And so I think that's an exercise every agency needs to go through when they're really trying to figure out what are we here for and who are we trying to serve.
Yeah, just to wrap up before we wrap up the podcast show, and hopefully Jim can agree to have a bit more of a discussion in our bonus content. Just to wrap up, is obviously this is a WordPress very focused show, but you know it's digital agency WordPress. So how important is WordPress for your team and in your consciousness, or is it just one of many tools? You know, how would you place WordPress connected to your agency?
Yeah, well, my personal blog, Growthhit, and Growthhit are both built on WordPress. For me, it was kind of my entry point into getting somewhat technical as like a finance person and marketer, kind of banging around on building my own WordPress site, like playing with plugins, trying to code stuff myself. For me, I think anyone that's in the world of digital marketing, being technical has to be a component of that, whether it's front end, back end, or getting into, design and UX. But you got to figure out what is the platform that's going to help you kind of practice that. And for me, it's been WordPress, and I really enjoy the kind of ecosystem around it, because there's so many thought leaders, there's so many tutorials, there's so many plugins that allow you to do whatever you want. And so I like our tech stack to build like the 7-figure agency is like very simple, but the core of it is WordPress.
Oh, great to hear that. Jim, you have to come back on the show. I think the half hour, you can always tell when it's a good interview and a good, if you've got a great guest, because the time, you've got so many more questions you want to ask. I've got some questions that I'm going to be asking Jim. I'm sure Adrian is ready for some more questions. We'll be, you can watch that on the WP-Tonic website and YouTube channel, the bonus content and the whole interview. But for now, we're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show. Jim, how can people find out more about you and your agency?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just growthhit.com. My email's jim@growthhit.com. And then I'm on Twitter at Jim W. Huffman. I post some interesting articles that I find and the occasional baby pic. So yeah, I'm around.
That's great. And Adrian, how can people find out more about you and your great product, Groundhog?
So if you're an agency and you are looking to help a business with their digital marketing, sales, and marketing automation, then you can go to groundhog.io. We have lots of proven digital marketing and sales products there that will help you do just that.
And I just want to announce we've got another webinar in August. It's going to be the first Tuesday of August, which I think is the 4th, at 9 a.m. We got Chris Badder of Lifter LMS is going to be our guest. We're going to be talking about all things Lifter LMS. We're going to be talking about Lifter LMS 4.0, one of the biggest updates that they have done recently. We're going to be talking about Lifter LMS groups. We're going to be talking about best practice of building a course using Lifter LMS. It's going to be a great webinar with Chris. Like I say, it's going to be totally free, and you're going to have the ability at the end to ask Chris any question about Lifter LMS. It's going to be a blast. Chris is a friend of mine. So basically, you can go to the WP-Tonic website, and right in the top menu, there'll be free webinar button, and you can register on there. Like I say, that's going to be on the first Tuesday of August, which is the 4th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Hopefully you've enjoyed the interview. Go over to the bonus content. I think it's going to be a great conversation that we're continuing. We'll be back next week, folks. Bye. So on to bonus content. So I thought Adrian had a great question there about pop-ups. One thing was that I was thinking as you were giving such a great reply, Jim, was I don't think enough brands do enough. They talk about, their brand ambassadors, being part of the tribe, but I don't think enough e-commerce sites do enough to promote, like giving discounts to people that are actually out there promoting their products that are real, really talking about. They don't monitor, they don't award those people enough? And then I don't see it. Are there any case studies that you know that in the e-commerce space that people are doing that, or do you think they shouldn't do that? What do you think about what I've just said?
Yeah, it's funny as I kind of look at our own clients we work with in the e-commerce space, like the ones that become a breakout success and the ones that don't, it really is the ones that are authentic, have a true problem they're solving, but most importantly, they have this community of brand ambassadors, early adopters, or evangelists that are like going out there spreading the word for them. And it's like, are you like engineering an experience to amplify them, whether that's giving them first access to stuff, discounts, free products, affiliate programs. But because when you think about growth, what are your channels for growth? A lot of times you go to these paid channels and you're only as good as your ad budget in that case. SEO is great, but it can take a long time, right? If you get that channel working for you, it can literally be a game changer for going to the next level. So whether you call it community-based marketing or brand ambassadors, I think approaching it in an authentic way and like rewarding those people is so important. And the reason why people don't do it is it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard to scale and people don't put the time into it, but it's hands down. Like if you have that as a foundation of like a growth channel, it can be a secret weapon.
Over to you, Adrian.
How would you even start building a growth channel? I've been building my own growth channel through my certified partner network since kind of like we started, and it's incredibly difficult and it's taking a long time. So if someone was listening to this and said, well, wow, that sounds like way too good to be true, how would I go about doing that? What would be your starting steps?
Yeah, would this be for like an e-commerce?
Yeah, let's take it from an e-commerce perspective.
Okay, yeah. So here's the really annoying answer is you do it one person at a time, right? And it's this long slog. And so we actually just did this kind of blog post talking about this bottoms up approach where, so first it's like you do the annoying exercise of personas, right? Who's your ideal persona? Where do they live online? Using tools like SpyFu, SimilarWeb, SEMrush, now SparkToro to be like, okay, our ideal persona is females aged 25 to 35, 40 that are getting married or that live in urban areas. And then you're figuring out where they live online, whether it's Reddit forums, communities, offline associations, organizations they're with, influencers they follow. And then it's like, okay, what is an activation strategy to get in front of them or to partner with Outdoor Voices or Facebook pages? And you have a lot of different things where you give away free product, discounts. Maybe you can do content with, virtual tutorials. What is an authentic way to get in front of them? And then it's just doing the hand-to-hand combat of trying to go to the community leader or go to this one-off influencer in a very genuine, authentic way and talk to them. But along the way, as you're doing this process, lean on the side of not consuming content, but creating content, showing the behind the scenes story. Because if you're authentic and genuine with your story, people want to be along for that ride, especially if you're early on. I think there's a book came out that was like Show Your Work that talks about like, doing something every day that's giving people insight. I'm also of the thought of everything that you share, make 80% of it something that adds value. So as you're doing that and people hear about you and they go and look at what you put out, like, wow, this person really is just trying to help and add value. And so let's say you figure out what works as far as the types of communities to go after and activation strategy, then you can scale it using a tool like Mailshake for email automation, having it, plug into something like Pipedrive, which is like a CRM. That's a way to do it. Because that's kind of, this is going more on the B2B side, but that's what we've done, whether it's trying to talk to, if it's like Slack groups or podcasts or doing partnerships. And we'll even do free work for clients because we're just like, hopefully this will pay off over the long haul. But it's the other thing that's annoying is that it's not a quick win like ads where you just press the green button and it starts spinning. This is a long play and it's somewhat manual.
And what's the, I'm just to give us a little bit of a time frame, because yes, it's a long play. How long is it?
It's only as good as your people you're going after and your.
The Jim Adrian's such a young man, but he's a man in a rush, and I'm 56, and I got more patience. Unless Adrian gets an instant result, Jim,
I'm all about instant results. I love pushing green buttons.
To drop anything that doesn't get a result in 2 weeks almost.
I know I can be like that too. Maybe as I'm kind of in between, right? So I'm like trying to be more patient. It's so funny because like I did like a webinar like a year and a half ago, and I was like, I did a webinar, and then I might as well have done. It's like a tree fell in the woods and nothing happened. I was like, okay. And then a year and a half later, someone's like, hey, I was on your webinar. You know, would love to talk about working together. I'm like, what webinar is he talking about? And it was that one from a year and a half ago, and he ended up becoming a client. I was like, oh wow. Like that was a long tail, but you know, that worked out. So it's I don't have a good answer.
I'll tell you what I found about webinars actually, Jim. If it becomes just a marketing gig where you're just pushing a specific product, it's not going to go down with your tribe. If it really is educational and you're just showing features and there's a buzz around the subject or product, you normally will get a pretty good attendance. But if it's just a hour marketing spiel, it's not going to, you know, obviously we do everything to promote our business or product because we've got to make a living. But that, you know, I find that's the problem with a lot of people that are doing webinars. There's too much marketing spiel and not enough education in them.
I couldn't agree more. And people are smart. They're savvy. They see through that if you're selling. But if you spend 95% of the time just like giving, that last 5%, like, okay, how do I work with this guy or girl? You know? And so I 100% agree. Also, I think people are afraid to give away the secret sauce. Sometimes they want to like hold back. And I've been like that before, but the truth is people are too busy, lazy, or not focused to do exactly what you're saying a lot of the time. So I'm all about, let me give the secret sauce and then some, to where they're almost so overwhelmed. Like, okay, that's a lot. Let me just hire you to do that. Or like, I couldn't replicate that. So,
yeah, I see it very like the car maintenance industry. There's people that can't afford a mechanic, or they want to work on their car. Mm-hmm. So they're the DIY crowd. There's those that want to work.
And they'll never be your customer, so it's not worth trying.
No, and then there's those that don't want to work on the car, but they can't afford a main dealership, or they don't think the main dealership provides any real value, so they go and find a local mechanic that can work on it. And then there's those that have their BMW or their Porsche or their Lexus, and they would never dream to go to a secondary dealership. Partly out of snobbery, and also they change their car every 3 years, so they're always under warranty, and they just go to the main dealership. So I see that in the world of digital agencies, there's kind of those. It's the same setup. What did you think of that, Jim?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's also like kind of knowing, who are you serving, and being okay with that persona that's never going to be your customer, just like putting that information out there, you know? And so, I think that comes back to that idea of knowing exactly who your customer is and who you're serving, and just as important, who you're not.
Yeah, I think it's really crucial because I've spent a lot of time, and I think a lot of people, freelancers that want to become agency, you learn it's really important. You can spend a lot of time with people that will never become, they just cannot become their clients, because in reality they just don't have the budget to ever be able to afford you where you can sustain your business. They just haven't got the budget, have they? Mm-hmm.
Oh, totally. I know. And we've been a little bit colder, or not colder. We've been a little bit more open to just saying no to people when we know they don't have the budget, where before I'd like try and work and squeeze them in. But then we would find out in 1 to 3 months, they're so price sensitive. It just doesn't work. They're literally critiquing every little thing. And you just have to be okay with like, those aren't our customers. Maybe we can help them in other ways with content and training, but not for the core services.
That's great. Got a final question, Adrian?
I'm all good.
It's all good. I think it's been a fascinating discussion, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on the show. The 40 to 45 minutes have gone quick. That's always a great sign when you got an interview. You have to come back later on in the year or the beginning of the new year, and we have to have another great discussion. Hopefully, if you enjoyed that, listeners and viewers, we'll be back next week with another great guest. We'll see you soon. Bye.